So when there's a drastic difference that's noticeable in a child's sleep habits, eating habits, work habits, their joy, if you've noticed sadness or a choice to isolate, and then I would look for opportunities to have real conversations with the kids.
I used to joke a little bit that my kids would always need counseling just because I'm their dad. But what do we do when our kids are maybe actually facing adverse childhood experiences that are really real? Not just something to be joked about, but something that could really be setting them back or being a detriment to their behavior or their development. I think thinking about this sometimes can really lead us to dark places as parents. But today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, in this daily segment, Facing the Dark, Dr. Kathy has some great insights for us as we think through the reality that our kids are going to have challenging times in their future, and they can overcome it through the grace of Christ. Dr. Kathy helps us get a picture of what that looks like. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So Dr. Kathy, adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs for short, are very common among adolescents, with about 80% experiencing at least one ACE. That's according to a new study that has been published online in the journal Pediatrics. The researchers found that emotional abuse or household poor mental health and physical abuse really had the highest prevalence of all these ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, in the kids in the group. Overall, about 80% and 22% of adolescents experienced at least one adverse childhood experience and 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, respectively. Specifically inside of this study, they found that those that might be in some different minority groups, things like non-Hispanic multiracial, or those that battle with gender dysphoria and who self-identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual, that they actually experienced far more ACEs than others inside of the test group. So Dr. Kathy, I want to ask you, we all know what kind of the extreme concept of an adverse childhood experience could look like. Different things like from emotional abuse to poor mental health really in kids. But I wonder sometimes about how we addressed what I would say are kind of the quote unquote softer cases. And really, if that's even happening in our homes. How do we know if our kids are struggling from an adverse childhood experience, even under our own roofs?
Yeah, great question. These stats are really interesting, by the way. How do we know under our own roof if a child that we're raising or taking care of is in these percentages of young people who are saying that they've had adverse childhood experiences? There's two things that come to my mind. One would be that they're very different from their siblings. Usually a set of siblings has much in common. The same type of joy, the same type of play habits, the same type of work habits for work around the home, as well as schoolwork that they bring home to complete. So I would say if a child is very different from the siblings, I would wonder why. And I would wonder if they have experienced an adverse childhood experience outside of the home, at school or at a coaching situation, or even, heaven forbid, at a camping kind of experience. And then the other thing that might be even more relevant would be drastic changes in a child. And I've said this for years and years and years. If you have a child who is normally wanting to be with the family and entertained well by dad's stories and likes to entertain the others at the dinner table, and now is late to dinner and early to leave dinner and is eyes down and isn't laughing, something's happened there. So when there's a drastic difference that's noticeable in a child's sleep habits, eating habits, work habits, their joy, I would ask why. And I would start to observe carefully to see if the sadness, let's say that you observed a sadness or a choice to isolate rather than a choice to engage. If you've noticed sadness or a choice to isolate, I would observe, as I write about in the Parent Differently book, I would observe to see if there's a pattern. Is it always there, or is it always when somebody is in the home? And then I would look for opportunities to have real conversations with the kids.
Dr. Kathy, I do think that that's really wise to see how we could have different conversations with our kids and to look at that. I also wonder if these adverse childhood experiences almost build resiliency, or maybe there's a better way to build resiliency rather than just having these ideas of adverse childhood experiences, the different struggles or challenges that our kids might have in childhood. Do adverse childhood experiences naturally build resiliency? Should we be looking for those? Or should there be a different approach that we have to build resiliency with our kids?
That's a very relevant question because we do in our resiliency training talk about the need to help children overcome trauma, difficulty, disappointment, fear, grief, loss, those kinds of things. And if they've never had anything happen negatively to them, they won't build the muscles for resiliency and walking out of valleys. And that's going to be hard for them because when they leave your nest, there will be valleys up ahead. And if they've never experienced that successfully, in the safety of mom's home, then they're going to struggle and assume that they can't possibly overcome whatever's happened to them. I would not want adverse childhood experiences to be the way to do that. Adverse childhood experiences are usually things that last a while or even a very long time. An illness, the death of a mom, um, a school dropout, just a lot of things that can be really serious. I would rather that our children learn to be resilient with the smaller things that happen in life, with a move across town because dad lost his job. And that can be an adverse childhood experience, but that the effect of that should not last long. The death of a dog would be another experience that would be very difficult for a dog loving, 8-year-old, but will be able to be overcome by the parental support of that child. And so normal things going on, Wayne, there's plenty of normal things that happen to kids that we can be on the lookout for that would allow children to develop the stand up and walk out approach to life when they get hit with difficulty. I would not want for children to have what this study reports would be the very difficult adverse childhood experiences.
Dr. Kathy, I like that a lot. And I want to say that there are really significant situations where our kids will experience something that, whether we're in control of it or not, it's gonna be an adverse experience for their, being a kid and having innocence kind of in their life. Let's say we know our kids are really in that place where they're having what might be categorized as an adverse childhood experience. Let's say it's really evident to us. How do we respond and care for them and guide them in those moments?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Um, well, we get them out of the situation if we can. So if the adverse childhood experience is a bully coach or a really critical piano teacher or a fourth grade teacher, which was my story back a long time ago, if there's something you're aware of and you can rescue the child from that, do that. That's not going to inhibit resiliency. It's going to demonstrate love and support and courage on your part. So if you can make a change because you know that your child is really struggling, I know of situations, good friends of mine that Wayne, you also know, had a child in a Christian school who was being bullied by a classmate, and the parents advocated for the child and indicated that if that child was not expelled for legitimately horrific behavior, they would be leaving with all 5 of their kids. And come to find out, other parents had been complaining about the same child, and that child was expelled, and that family was asked to leave the school. And now this particular boy and all 5 of the children felt safe in the school. That's awkward. That's challenging. That's difficult. You don't want to be known as the one that's, complaining, but you advocate for your kids. You've got to do that. So rescue them when you can. Listen long to their stories. Listen to solve problems, not to judge. Listen to learn. Listen to love. Listen to advocate. I think we distract with fun when we can, but we also teach the strategies that the kids might need to stand up to the situation that they might be placed in. Do they know how to self-advocate? Do they know how would you want them to respond? If your son or daughter was being bullied, how would you want your child to respond? What's your value there? Have you taught them that? So a combination maybe of rescuing and then teaching. I would ask the child, let's say it's a school situation, Wayne, I would ask the child, how can I help you advocate for yourself? How can I help you go to your teacher so that you feel safer in your math class? How may I help you? Would you like me to go with you? Would you like to pretend that I'm the teacher and you come to me and you script something to say? What would be helpful to you so that you can advocate for yourself so that this stops? Can I help you? In what way are you ready to do it yourself? if when they're ready to do it themselves, man, praise the Lord. A little bit of coaching at home, but they go to the teacher and they say, have you noticed that Sam is like, he's cheating and he's bullying me to give him the answers, but I don't know what to do about it. Like that would be so, what would that do to the kid, right? Build confidence and build joy. Yeah.
I loved what Dr. Kathy had to say today. It reminded me of a passage that comes out of 1 Samuel chapter 17, and I'll begin reading at verse 37. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. I think reflecting on David's story shows how really small acts of faith and courage in childhood, especially with childhood challenges, can lead to a lifetime of resilience and have really an eternal impact. As parents, we can be comforted that our kids who are facing really things that we would call adverse childhood experiences, things that I think David also experienced, that these adversities that they're facing in childhood can be something that cultivates courage and spiritual strength that is going to carry them into future challenges. God sees our children's battles, but He's equipping them, even as their children, for really a purposeful future. And I think approaching challenges or obstacles or really experiences we wish our kids didn't encounter and walking through it with them with grace and confidence that God is doing something magnificent and maybe preparing them for something that's bigger down the road. I wonder if helping our kids see that can really be a bright light that shines and cuts through whatever dark times that they're facing today. I hope that's an encouragement for you, and I hope this whole podcast is an encouragement for you. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender. Thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.